I'll call this meeting of the City Commission to order, and this is Thursday, February 2nd. We're in the Commission chambers at the Municipal and Safety Building, and first we will have the invocation by Pastor Doug Tweed, Friends of the King Ministries, and if you'll stand for that and remain standing for the pledge.
Will you all join me in prayer? Wonderful, loving Lord God, first and foremost, we want to thank you for being so good, completely good, and for loving us all so much. Every person, young and old, rich and poor, every shape and color. You urge us in the Bible to pray for our government and our government leaders so that we might live peaceful, godly lives of dignity. And so we lift up the beautiful city of Johnson City, Tennessee to you tonight. And we lift up its government and its government leaders, God. We ask you to continue to bless Johnson City and protect its people from evil. We ask you to bless and protect all the men and women who serve in the various branches of Johnson City government. Law enforcement, fire protection, other first responders, education, public works in all its forms, finance, recreation, communications, management. Give them all the wisdom and insight to do their jobs well, and give them all the grace and mutual respect to work well together as a team of shared purpose. And Lord, we lift up Mayor Fowler and Vice Mayor Murphy, Commissioner Brock, Commissioner Hunter, and Commissioner Wise. Give them the wisdom and insight to do their jobs well and make good decisions tonight and all the days to come as they serve this city. Protect them from evil. Grant them the grace and mutual respect to work as a leadership team that draws on all their respective abilities. And finally, for all the people in this government, Lord, we pray that you will help us all to grow in our faith in you, and that Johnson City will become a city set on a hill in northeast Tennessee, whose light shines brightly for all to see. I come and I pray in the name of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the Vice Mayor just demonstrated why we can't have nice things.
You're going to put a lid on your drink.
Yeah.
Oh, you got one. Spilled out.
Might need some rags or something up here, but anyway.
Let him wipe it up there.
Want me to go get some paper? No, we're good.
Good evening.
The next order of business is the consideration of the approval of the minutes for the regularly scheduled City Commission meeting held on Thursday, January 19th, 2023.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Can you please call the roll for us, Mr. Trivett?
Commissioner Brock,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Yes.
Commissioner Wise.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Mayor Fowler.
Yes.
The next item on the agenda is a proclamation. This is a presentation of a proclamation in support of Black History Month.
Vice Mayor Dixon.
Doesn't sound on.
All right, thank you. Glad you're here tonight. Whereas our nation is strong and vibrant thanks to the creativity, fortitude, and resilience of people from every nationality and every background, and whereas we owe the study of Black history and the celebration of Black History Month to the efforts of Dr. Carter Godwin Woodson, who was born in 1875 in New Canton, Virginia, and whereas the son of former slaves, Dr. Woodson was educated at Berea College in Kentucky and earned his bachelor's and master's degrees at the University of Chicago, his PhD at Harvard, and studied at the Sorbonne in Paris, France. And whereas in 1915, Dr. Woodson founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, and whereas in 1926, he initiated the annual observance of Negro History Week in February due to the birthdays of President Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And whereas this annual event expanded into a month-long observance in 1976, known today as Black History Month, now therefore, I, Todd Fowler, Mayor of the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, in conjunction with the national observance, do hereby proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month. Thank you. You'll introduce yourself. Here.
Thank you, sir. Good evening to everyone. My name's Adam Dixon. I'm very proud to serve as supervisor of the Langston Center, and very appreciative to receive this proclamation on behalf of Carver and Langston, two of our centers here in Johnson City. City Manager Ball, Commissioners, Assistant City Manager Trivett, thank you all so much. When we think about the Black experience and Black history in our society, the Black experience is uniquely the American experience, and we want to do all that we can to promote community. We want to do all that we can to promote the values of our community and our country. So again, we're very appreciative for this proclamation. Thank you.
Mr. Dixon, could I ask you a question to comment on? And he's going to need the microphone again. We had our first Broadway show at the Martin Center this past week, and a group of students or teenagers from the Carver Center were the guests of Dr. Nolan, and I just would like for you to comment on what that experience was like for them.
So, as you said, last week, the 25th, we had 7 students, 4 from the Langston Center, 3 from Carver, along with Mr. Greenlee and myself. We went to see the opening of Annie, and the group Bravissima, Women Supporting the Arts, and East Tennessee State University were very kind to us. We had some of the best seating in the house. We had outstanding appetizers. Our kids showed up with big appetites and big eyes, and they had a ball, and they thoroughly enjoyed themselves. It was just a remarkable night. And just to pick on Mr. Greenlee, he enjoyed himself too. I was very surprised that he loved Annie, the play, and so and I'll get a good ribbon for that. But we all had a wonderful time. It was very, very positive. Very grateful to Bravissima and ETSU, and very thankful to the city for again just setting everything up that we can go.
Yeah. Well, I hope that they could see themselves up on that stage one day, and just there were a lot of young people there. My granddaughter was there with me, and just to see the wonder in their eyes watching that production was just amazing. So I just kept saying, are we in Johnson City? I mean, to have the Broadway show here is great. So,
Commissioners, the next order of business, I'll let the mayor make it back up here. The next order of business is the consideration of the consent agenda.
All right, I will start with my right today. Commissioner Wise, anything you'd like to pull?
Not me, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, sir. I would like to pull 5.1.3, 5.1.2, and 5.3.1.
Commissioner Brown?
5.1.1, plus some that Vice Mayor called.
Yeah,
They got it all.
They got everybody. All right. Ms. Beck, you ready?
Yes. Item 5.1.1, consider approval of an amendment to the FY 2021-22 Annual Action Plan to file with the Housing and Urban Development Authority I think we have Wayne Lyons here. This is an amendment to the plan that was previously approved by the commission.
Wayne.
If you want to come on up, Wayne. This is an item, the city allocated money to Eastern Star for purchasing property off Myrtle Avenue, and they were able to get the property donated. The city did that. So now they're allocating this money toward a basketball, it's a basketball,
Yeah,
Yes, part
that-
of it is a basketball court and recreation area at the
At
LXI
Keys-
nonprofit over in Keystone.
at Keystone. So it's reallocating the funding that came from that for a different
My
purpose.
question was just that, did Eastern Aid abandon the project, but what you just said cleared it up, that they had the property donated, and so it freed up the funds? It
Correct.
wasn't going to do away with some single-family housing, which we
No.
need desperately. Okay.
That's correct.
Very good.
That's all I needed to know.
I have a question, if I may. Understanding some of these funds are reallocated for basketball purposes, can you explain why we chose basketball other than another sport?
Sure. I'll actually have Damon come up and answer that. He and Sherry Trent from Eastern 8, they can kind of speak more to why they chose this project.
I have a good idea why Damon chose it.
Well, I'm Sherry Trent. I'm with Eastern 8 Community Development here in Johnson City, and I appreciate all y'all done for us in this community. But so once we got the property donated by the city, you know, it freed up the CDBG allocation, and it was just kind of fate that we went over to a community event that Damon had at LXI to give out resources to the community, and I knew one of the girls that volunteers for him, and we started talking about the project, and then she introduced me to Damon, and I don't know, it kind of just clicked. You know, we can maybe use the CDBG to put that basketball court in, and it would improve the community and kind of bring a resource to an underserved area. So it just kind of clicked, and I talked to Damon. He came over to our office, and we discussed it. And since we are familiar with CDBG and the rules and red tape, then, you know, it made sense that we partner so we could do the administration, and he could work with the guy that was planning it. So it just kind of fit. And, you know, with housing, the land is so hard to find right now, affordable land. So we just thought we'd plug this in and then move on to another house with the next round.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for coming today. Didn't know if you were able to make it. Can you explain what value basketball brings to our community, and also what basketball has brought as it has impacted your life?
Well, for me, it was a game changer. It got me out of a situation I didn't want to be in, living in a low-income environment. I always felt like it was more to it, to life. So I fought, and basketball gave me that opportunity. My father died when I was 13 of AIDS, when AIDS first hit the scene. And during that, basketball was my safe place. It gave me an outlet. It gave me a place to be normal. It gave me a place to just release some anger, release some, just some unknown feelings, unknown emotions that I didn't know. My mother, she couldn't deal with that aspect of my life. She didn't have nobody to deal with her. She found her mother dead. So she didn't know how to deal with me and with what I was going through. So I had, you know, I was bad grades, bad attitude after this happened. And basketball was the only thing that kept me grounded. So I wanted to play, so I listened to my coach. I did things for my coach that I wouldn't do for nobody else because I wanted that game. And it meant that much to me. And I see myself and so many kids in this area because basketball is a big sport in this area. Soccer is too. I'm not saying no other sport is, but basketball is huge, especially in the low-income community. And in this community in Keystone that we're talking about, it's a multi-million-dollar facility that they can't get in to use as they need to. They can get in it, but they can't use it as they need to. They need somewhere to go like I did, as Carver was for me. It was open all the time. And I could go, and I knew Uncle Melvin would be there, Herb was going to be there, somebody I could talk to, somebody I could release some emotion to. It was another man, another African-American man that I could speak with that understood some of the things I was dealing with. So I just wanted to be able to give that back. I always had a vision of when I retired of doing something for the community. And basketball, God gave me the vision of basketball because it helped me so much. And it's been doing a wonderful thing because I can reach so many kids, and I have reached a lot of kids during the game, through the game of basketball. So I always had a vision if we could get something in that community that they was proud of, that they wanted to attend, that we could get some change going on through the game of basketball. And basketball is just a sport, and I understand that because I fell flat on my face when I retired. Played 16 years professional, and when it ended, I lost myself, lost my identity, I lost who I was because I put everything into the game. But now I see we can use it to get an education. We can use it to better life. You can use it to get out of some situations. It ain't who you are, it's just what you do. And I relay that to the kids, and I think that's the biggest message I got for them. Because you go talk to these kids right now, every one of them say, I want to be an NBA star, I want to be an NFL. And to me, that's a false reality. It's only a small percentage to make it, and when you do make it, it's a lot of problems that come with that we don't, that I wasn't prepared for. So I just want to be able to give that back. I want to be able to help kids that was in my situation. All these kids are not bad. They just in bad situations. They making bad decisions. Because I was doing that. I was right in that crowd until the game of basketball became important to me. And that's what separated me. And I know that for a fact. So I just want to offer that to other kids in this area.
Mr. Johnson, will the courts be open to?
Everybody.
Everybody?
So it's just
Okay.
not for LXI. This is for
Right.
the Keystone community, anybody that wants
Very
to come.
good. I
Now,
know-
it'll be, it won't be gated.
Yeah.
We'll have a fence around so the balls won't go everywhere, but
Mm-hmm.
it's durable. We're spending a little extra money to make that happen. The playground will be open because we want single mothers, we want the kids, we want the Keystone community to enjoy it, not look at it through a fence gate, but open to them to have. And they can walk to it, they don't need a car to get there, and just be there for them.
Well, to the commission, as y'all recall, about 3 years ago, Lottie Ryans and Dr. Kim Hale from ETSU did a study of our neighborhoods, of zip codes in our neighborhoods, and what amenities existed in those neighborhoods. And of course, this neighborhood is one that doesn't have a whole lot of stuff around it. So adding this really, I think, checks another box for us of putting a recreational, we don't have really any parks. The closest is Civitan, but you have to get there, right? So I see this as just such a good project for y'all to think of and to divert the money to that. And I think we all should sign up to go over and play a game of horse or something as soon as it's opened.
Let's go.
All right.
To add to Commissioner Brock's comments, I do believe we as a community, not just a commission, should get behind these efforts to add value to the Keystone community. It's been a community that's been overlooked. Not a lot of investments have been made there, but I want to thank you all for thinking outside of the box to get kids involved in recreational activities, to get them off the streets, to get them involved in things that are positive. So thank you again, Mr. Johnson. I'm very familiar with things that you've done in this community in terms of being on the championship Science Hill basketball team. I'm not from here. I had to do my research. You played UT basketball for several seasons and also overseas. So you're a community legend within itself. And so for you to come back to your community and add value, it means a lot to the citizens here. And I can't speak on behalf of the commission, but I can speak on behalf of myself and those in this community. Keep up the good work. I support you. And let's go. Let's get it done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate both of your organizations in doing that, working together. That's great. So thank you. Appreciate
Ribbon
it.
cutting.
We'll have a big event.
Yes,
Yeah.
there'll
All
be
right.
a
Let us
ribbon
know
cutting, it'll be a basketball game. Hopefully, I had talked to the police chief a while ago when I first had this vision, and hopefully we can connect that and have some games with them and all kind of stuff. So, great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next, 5.1.2, Mr. Murphy.
Yes, sir.
Yes, this is consider an interlocal agreement with the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Chief Turner.
Ms. Ball, Mayor.
Yeah.
This is an interlocal agreement with the Washington County Sheriff's Office. It is in reference to a JAG grant, and the grant was awarded to the sheriff's office, and we will be a subrecipient of that grant. And the amount that the city will receive is $20,250, and the county will utilize $12,244 of that grant. Our purpose, our purchase from that grant money will be for a rapid deployment portable telescopic tower, and what we are replacing is a piece of equipment on our command post that enables us to put up a camera, especially at festivals in the city that we have here, or tactical situations, to help us provide a safe environment during those festivals, or for officers who are involved in a tactical situation. It's also a piece of equipment that would be available to other agencies in the area as well through mutual aid requests.
Where is this camera located?
Where is it located?
Where
Yes,
will
sir.
they put it?
It'll be on the, it is a separate system, so it will be able to move it from location to location.
So it's a mobile camera?
It's a mobile camera, yes, sir. And it has a telescoping pole, so it would, say, the Umoja Festival in King Commons, we can set it up there and monitor the crowd there, or in Founder's Park, just different locations. We'll be able to move it from location to location.
So there's just one camera?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then the county, I think they're using theirs for the tips 411, so that people can send in tips to their department like they do Johnson City as well.
So is this agreement just saying there's a pot of money and that we're agreeing on how each other's going to use it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's being split between our department and the sheriff's department.
And my understanding is this typically, like in years past, would come directly to the city, and now it goes to the sheriff, and then we get a portion of it. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next, 5.1.3, Vice Mayor Murphy again.
Yes, sir.
I think we have people here.
Yes, we have Mr. Carter here from the school, as well as James Ellis, our Parks and Recreation Director, to do a presentation on this.
I'd like to give you, I have a proposal letter and also kind of the process I have for you guys. Can I go ahead and bring that to you?
You
all?
bet. We'll hand them out for you while you talk, if you want to do that.
We trust you.
Yeah, thanks. Couple that way. Got that one,
Yeah, I know.
The second one, second.
Oh, it's another.
There's two.
All right, I hope everybody, that is a proposal, and also it is kind of the process. I'm Coach Stacy Carter from Science Hill High School. I just completed my 13 years as a head football coach, and what I'm here to talk about is youth league football. This is something that have been thought about for a long time. Like I say, I've been here 13 years, but finally getting to an opportunity where I think we can get here. I'm going to give this presentation, and please, I know you'll have a lot of questions, but hopefully I can give you the meat and potatoes of this. First of all, this concept has been approved by the Johnson City Parks and Rec, and also have been in front of the school board and have talked to them already, so we already have the approval from them. Why we want youth league football under Parks and Rec? One thing, community involvement, and right now, people are looking for other places to go. We have private schools coming in, and we think we're sitting on a gold mine here in Johnson City, and through our Parks and Rec system and the facilities we have, and Science Hill, that we can have programs like this, and it would really make a difference. Another reason is, we haven't, and James can tell me if this is what I've heard, that we haven't had a program like this in 40 years in our Parks and Rec program. I believe a program like this will establish relationships that will last a lifetime. Our goal is to increase community involvement in Johnson City, providing youth league football and cheerleading through the Johnson City Parks and Rec in conjunction with the Johnson City Schools. Why is it important? Johnson City, as you know, just started 2 middle schools. So we have Liberty Bell and Indian Trail right now. There's all kinds of opportunity for these children right now. I think Ms. Brock was at some of the games and saw when you got the 2 middle schools together on what that looked like. I mean, there was people having more opportunity than we ever had, which is pretty neat, and that's why we did the 2 middle schools. I believe that a program like this, we have to have these programs going through our elementary schools to feed into these middle schools to have the numbers. We think there's interest here, but there's few opportunities to have the school system working and the Parks and Rec working together, especially at the elementary level. Why football? Well, first, I'm a football coach. I know that it's important to me, just like basketball is important to Damon. But the season coincides with the start of school. It kind of sets the tone for everything in school. It represents all different people, races. I have big kids, little kids, strong kids, weak kids, black kids, white kids, Hispanic kids. It's very diverse. And I believe this helps bring the community together. High school football revenue supports every athletic sport at Science Hill High School. So that's important. Also, it gives a place for our band to perform. They also get the concessions off all our games, and that's a big part of their program also. Methods to accomplish this goal. First of all, this has been done in other places and been very successful. I have Blount County on there, and that's the big one, Maryville. So when you think of Maryville, they probably do it as good as anybody has done football and had community in that football, and they have a great rec program through Blount County. And Mr. Ellis actually knows the people of Blount County, because that's another thing. We could bring them in. They have bylaws that they have really did their homework and worked with the high schools there when they had all those state championships. So I think we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We just got to look at the good programs. There will be a board of directors needed. We know that. Somebody that represents our parks and recs, our school system. Some people that are already involved in the youth league football right now, and also our Indian Trail community and our Liberty Bell community. Certified coaches, and this is the hardest thing. Certified coaches is the hardest thing, and I know the people from the Parks and Rec will tell you that finding good coaches is a hard thing to do. Even on the high school level, that's a hard thing to do. They must have background checks. They must be USA football certified. That's the heads up, the certification for tackling. And that leads to the NFHS certification, and I'll put it here, that's the National Federation of State High School Association. They have free courses that we take as coaches on concussions, cardiac arrest, sportsmanship. We think that needs to be done. Also, we want it where we provide clinics for these coaches and our players helping these things and helping these programs, and we want to have that too. Character curriculum. And actually, Ms. Brock had asked me about some of this character stuff. Character curriculum for not just players, but coaches also. First of all, as a coach, I think we better hire good people with high character. I mean, it's going to be hard to teach them, but they have to have some standards to go by. There's a lot of programs out there. Mr. Ellis has some, he's going to tell you some, but I have one that I actually personally experienced. We had a guy that had started this, and we went through a Quest program. It's a character development. I would hope that you guys will look this up and look through their mission statement. But it's a curriculum that goes within your practices that's not just for football or for whatever other sport is. It's for the character piece, because you'll actually drill that just like you would drill everything else that you do. All coaches will have an app. Unfortunately, this is one that costs. It costs about $15 per player, which is pretty high. We got it free because the guy was kind of coming in and helping us. He was a long snapper for the University of Tennessee that started this program. But it's a great program, and if you want to know anything more about it, I can get that information to you. what this could look like. Now, this is my vision. My vision is what we see on Friday nights. We just played Dobbins Bennett High School, and I think is one of the best games that I've ever been a part of. And I looked up in the stands, and we didn't have the people we probably should have there. And it was disappointing. It's disappointing as a coach. I think it's disappointing as administration at Science Hill. But what I could see this, if we had all our elementary schools had teams, they wore their colors, they came, each elementary school had cheerleaders. They come to the games, they get in free to the games. They bring 2 or 3 parents, and sisters and brothers with them, and have a section reserved. I already talked to Coach Turner. We could have them sitting there, have supervision there, run out with us in different games. It builds community. And if we could have that, that's what I want to see. I think it sets the tone for the whole school year when you can have things like this. Enrollment numbers. This is the enrollment numbers, and the reason I have this is, can we actually have teams for all 8 elementary schools? In a perfect world, I would like to see that. But right now, as you see, we have 3 schools going into Indian Trail and 5 schools going to Libertyville. And they're pretty much close. I mean, it's just a few, I think it's probably about 80 kids difference. There's not big difference in those schools. Interest letter. I sent this out a couple weeks ago. And after about 5 days' time, I got over 300 responses. And I actually got about 25 more responses today. They're coming in every day and coming in late through the kids that want to participate in this. The breakdown, based on the entrance, well, you would have to do, I think Lake Ridge, Fairmont, and Mountain View could have teams of their own. And they go in Indian Trail. And they're the bigger schools. Town Acres and Woodland, they have big numbers too. I think they probably could have teams on their own too. But at the numbers I've got, we could have one, call it Toppers Maroon, that would be Team 4. You could have Cherokee, North Side, South Side, and that could be Toppers Gold. But eventually, hopefully when the word gets out, we will get the numbers up where we can do everybody. The games. The good thing about it, all games will be in Johnson City. We would play an interleague thing. Yes, we could play people from Kingsport if they had leagues like this, but right now we want to keep it in Johnson City. We've got the best facilities around right now in our youth league programs. People are traveling to Mountain City, Clallan every Saturday, just moving around. That's not all bad every time, but sometimes we want to change it and keep people here. If each team plays twice, we have a 4-team playoff at the end of the season. We'll have 8 regular season games. And we would like to pick an all-star team, let them go play a tournament at the end. Because first thing people say, well, that would water down your competition. Well, it will. But more people are involved. You've got more people playing. All those people won't play football at Science Hill High School. I understand that. But the relationships that will establish with the families and stuff early, that might just be a vision of mine, but I think that will help your attendance, and I think that will help your community. Age divisions. You would have for each school, if they had, or a topper team, they would have 3 age divisions. They have a total of 15 teams. This is based on the interest letter. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and 5th, and 6th. Homeschool, or the county players that people wanted to play. James will have more on this, but I would say play closest to the elementary school, or we had short on numbers, we could fill those in. And there's already people contacting us want to be a part of this. And here's the big thing, the estimated cost. There's no doubt football is expensive, especially the startup cost. You can see the helmets, shoulder pads, jerseys, and pants, but the total cost to start up a program would be $285 per player. Based on 30 players and 15 teams, the startup cost would be $128,250. Equipment lifespan. The lifespan of equipment, which I deal with it a lot, it's about 10 years for shoulder pads and helmets. Cloth can last you probably 3 to 4 years approximately. It depends on how you take care of it. Reconditioning equipment. This is things that probably don't get done in youth, but need to be done. We recondition our helmets every year. They have to be for the youth every other year. That's a cost of $35 a helmet, and reconditioning for 450 helmets, that's based on those numbers that I said, that's $15,750. If it's every other year, I would suggest doing half one year, half the other, and it comes down and makes it more doable. Registration fee. Most registration fees are $50 per player. The fee will be waived if the player can't afford it. And based on 450 players, that would bring in $22,500. Orienting equipment. Equipment right now with the supply chain where it's at, we've had problems. We deal with BSN at Science Hill, and I deal with Rydell a lot, and I've talked to the Rydell rep. If this program gets approved, and it would happen by the fall, it would have to be ordered the next month to be able to even have equipment to do this. So here's the big thing, the funding. And I broke it down. The funding, startup would be $128,250. I don't think James and Joe Ebarb, there would be a new position because there would have to be somebody else. This is a lot of work to coordinate to get started. So that's why I put that. Have no idea what the cost of that is. Registration fee brings in about $22,500, which covers equipment reconditioning, and that's for safety. And also it covers 10% of equipment replenishment. The way we do that, we always order 10% because we don't want everything to go out of date at one time. So you do that and it rotates there, so you don't go at the 10-year time, you got to pay another $128,000, which leaves $6,750 for additional cost. That's the end of my presentation. I'm sure you have a lot of questions on this, but thank you all for your time and listen to me on this.
Mr. Carter, if I may call you Coach Carter.
Absolutely.
I do have several questions. And thank you for this presentation. I really thought you did a phenomenal job at explaining the details of this program. I assume that you hope to start in the fall of this year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's the goal.
Okay. And I'm not sure if I got a good grasp of the yearly cost totals that a program like this would bring or cost the city. Total.
The
Each
total
year.
cost, okay.
Each year,
Well,
what?
each year after the first additional cost is going to be, $130,000.
Right.
To start it up. After that, it's going to cost, and I'll just round it up, around $8,000 for reconditioning, which should be able to be covered through the registration fee.
So that's just 8,000, is that?
That's
That's
that's recondition, that's
Okay.
your equipment, yes.
Plus a staff member if,
Yeah, plus a staff
Staff.
member. And then we, if we're gonna charge the gates, to paying for the referees and stuff like that is another additional cost too.
So would you say about, what, 20,000, 25,000 total? Or more than that?
It's more than that. A staff person would be significantly more than that.
You can find a staff person for 25.
Well, I was thinking of seasonal staff, because this is not a year-round program.
If we were to hire a recreation generalist in athletics, which is entry level, the salary's $29,000.
I'm just trying to wrap my mind around what should we expect as a city to pay every year moving forward. I love football, I'm a huge football fan, but just, trying to understand what ongoing incurred costs would the city be responsible for moving forward? Because this is a program, it's not like a one-time thing. This is something we want to build on moving forward for the sake of the community.
Yes, sir. One thing I can tell you, on the equipment and the reconditioning, it's 8 and 8, you're paying that, it's $16,000
Okay.
a year for that. So, just on the equipment replenishing, the 10%, because you don't code it out at one time. So you'll have to do that. And you must do that reconditioning every other year. And I know youth leagues go, and they probably go 10 years without doing it. That's not healthy. That's not what we need to do. For safety and concussions, those helmets need to be recertified every other year.
And my guess, I had one question, maybe to help answer that annual cost. So I think in a staff person, if you include benefits and everything, and I'm assuming, James, that would include, we would have, that position would have.
cost did not include benefits.
Okay, so it's about 30% more, which would put us at about 50,000 a year for a staff person, 16,000 with the reconditioning of everything. And then you had said that you would recommend ordering the uniforms incrementally, such a percentage of replacement.
Yes, ma'am.
And you wouldn't
that-
start that though until year 7, 8?
Well, you really need to start that because you want to go, it's 10 years, so you want to get that percentage. So if you only did it and you'd only have 90 helmets if you did it, and they would all code out at one time. So you got to do it pretty quick to actually to rotate it to have enough to go, because at the end of this, you buy all those helmets at one time, and then all of a sudden 450 helmets at 10 years, they're done.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to say,
So-
maybe the cost would be around 70,000 up until year that we would start replacing, but we wouldn't replace ones that we just bought. So you would wait at least till year 5 to even start replacing.
Yes, you could.
And so that's
But-
what I'm trying to say, for the first 5 years, I think we're around 70,000, but then when we start the replacement
ma'am.
cycle of 10%, if you're trying to rotate out, you know, all of the uniforms by year 10 or 12, I'm assuming, I mean, all of the
Yeah, by
packs.
10, you have to rotate them out. There would be more of a cost then if you did wait it at 10.
Yeah,
be more of a
I would
cost.
estimate that after the first couple of years, we'd be looking at 100,000 a year approximately.
Now, what about, like you mentioned, certified coaches? I'm assuming we're not going to find those as volunteers. How would you put a number on beginning to, I'm assuming each of these teams you're envisioning would need a distinct, unique coach. You wouldn't have somebody doing double duty or,
It would be volunteer coaches, it would. And it would
Okay.
have to be somebody that passed the background check and then had all these certifications that we're talking about. And even with character and everything else and the fundamental stuff that we teach them also, they'd have to, and that's
So-
where we want to get to.
so then in that scenario, we would need to anticipate being prepared to reimburse or offer some, I mean, I'm assuming then some of the coaches you need probably don't have those certifications today, but we'd be needing to put them through that. Is there a sense of that cost?
Well, the education that the NFHS learned is free. So those are the ones we take at the high school level, so those are free.
Okay.
So, all those courses I get, the only course that wouldn't would be that character one that I was talking about. If we went, and there's all kinds of programs out there like that, I just listed one. And then most of them have a fee, some of them are free, but most of them have a fee if you do that. That's more of like a character curriculum that we're teaching through there.
Coach Carter, you talked about some of your assistant coaches, and you would be very engaged in this program too. What will they be doing? Will they be doing mostly coach development, doing training for the coaches, or will they actually have some hands-on with, you know, setting, you know, how to set up practices and do all that kind of thing?
That's what we want to do. We want to bring them in for a week with our coaches and tell them how we practice. And first, we want in our bylaws for them to practice like we practice. A lot of times in youth league football, they'll practice 6 days a week. And we practice in pads 2 days a week, in shells, shoulder pads and helmets, or shorts the other times, and then we play. And a lot of times the little leagues don't do that just because they haven't been trained on that. So we would want to train them on our practice plans. We would want them to use terminology, not necessarily the same place, but the same terminology and stuff that we use. And also we would want to teach them the fundamentals for tackling that we use and the safety part of that also.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
The staff person, is this a full-time job for a staff person, or could they have other duties
That would
during
be
the
a full-time
downtimes?
position during the fall months and a little bit prior to in recruiting coaches and officials. However, we would have the luxury of having that person year-round that could help out with other programming.
All right, I had a couple questions. So from now on, would this be in the Parks and Rec budget, and we just approve it through the Parks and Rec budget for all these things? And then the equipment, I will tell you from being a sports medicine physician that needs to be reconditioned and make sure shoulder pads and helmets are safe, because I can tell you from when they have bad shoulder pads, lots of AC separations. When they have bad helmets, I see a lot of concussions. And I see enough already. We don't have it, need to have it in elementary kids. So,
Coach and I have discussed that at great length.
yeah, so I agree. I mean, we need to make sure that in your budget to do that, because safety is number one with that.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask, so this is not about this specific request, but so there's an isolated request for the initial funding. That's what's in the consent agenda. But I feel like tied to it is an ongoing sustained commitment for your vision to actually work, that we're trying to crowdsource in the context of this meeting to project what the Parks and Rec folks are going to be doing in fiscal year '24 and '25, in budgets that we're not yet working on. I recognize the other side of that is you have a timeline that you're trying to balance, and so I'm sensitive to that. And I guess I'm wondering, could staff come back even in 2 weeks at our next meeting with a more definitive sense of, if approved at this request, what subsequent checks we're essentially committing to in the budget process? We're going to begin in earnest in probably 60 days, or 45, yeah. Would that be an appropriate way ahead? I mean, that would still meet their timeline.
Yeah, and that's why my first question originated along the lines of what costs would be associated moving forward after the start of cost, and see kind of where we're at, and, wanting to know what long-term efforts is the city committed to financially.
I think, Vice Mayor, it would be like any other program we operate. We would have officials, scorekeepers, equipment, that type of thing.
So this isn't, I wasn't clear on it in the board packet. This isn't us approving something within your existing budget. This is over and above.
It would come from our existing budget, and we think that we can realize the savings in personnel. Just
That's
because
not
we
how I
have-
read the write-up.
It's not budgeted. He's saying that they would have enough surplus probably left in their budget after this fiscal year to cover the additional cost.
From our personnel.
That's what you're indicating, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
So it's not budgeted. It would be above what was budgeted for them.
So the move we would be making would be to spend out of fund balance. The consequence might be that your operating budget in FY '23 would net out to the good to fund balance.
Yes, sir.
But just to be clear what we're talking about. Okay.
That's correct.
We're putting the money out, but we may get all of that money back.
Right,
from
I
Parks
just think it
and
would
Rec.
be helpful to kind of map out some pro formas. I mean, we're assuming X number of kids, we're assuming that they're gonna pay a nominal registration, but that might be sufficient enough to offset at least physical, the
consumables.
thank you for the consumable elements in an operating sense. Surely in the span of 14 days, this can have a little more definition, because, and I want to acknowledge, that Mr. Ellis is retiring, and congratulations on
Thank you,
that
sir.
note. And so I think there's also consequences for making sure that the vision that Coach Carter has presented and that we're signing on for actually manifests itself in something 6 months from now that we all agree we recognize.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing, I guess, to ask for additional money within a current existing budget cycle if you have a water main bust, or you realize supply chain for salt and you want to get ahead of that for, upcoming winter. But this is, like was mentioned, would be a recurring cost, and honestly, I'd feel more comfortable being part of a budget cycle request. But, I think it's a great idea, and I hope it happens, because I think it's great for, the community and for the football program. But I do have a lot of questions, and you mentioned that you would talk to Blount County and Knox County. Have you already? I mean, I just, with some of the questions with expenses, I'm concerned that there's hidden costs or expenses that we haven't yet recognize that they may make us aware, hey, you know what, when we first started this program, here's something that we came across that I'd like to know. I mean, is there insurance liability? And not just for the city and taxpayer funds, but for those that participate. Are they going to have a, a insurance, as a player that costs money on top of the $50 and the cleats and the other things that they'll have to buy to participate, which may impact what we receive from the application or the $50 fee, and whether or not we actually are able to collect that up to, because I would expect, 22 would be great.
Yeah.
We might be looking more like 13,
Mr. Ellis, this went before the Parks and Rec Board.
Yes, it did.
So with them approving this to come on to the commission, what was their discussion about the ongoing, of adding this to the Parks and Rec cafeteria menu? And
They felt really good about being able to, after, as Coach Carter said, 40 years, bringing back youth football. It's something that we have had calls on for the last couple of years. I know Coach Carter gets calls daily about us operating youth football for the good of the community. And the Parks Board supported it 110%. They felt like, yes, it's needed. I think the biggest bullet is the initial setup costs. From there, it's just budgeting, your scorekeepers, your officials, just like we do for soccer, like we do for basketball, volleyball, every sport we operate. The biggest thing is the equipment, just simply because football, as our mayor said, you have to have the NOXI-approved helmets and things of that nature, which is a little more expensive.
What about I think cheerleading was mentioned, is that part of this? Is there an expense to that?
Cheerleading was mentioned. We have not, unless you, Coach Carter, have, I haven't had any conversation with anyone concerning the cheerleading, other than there would be a cheerleading program that come along with the football. As far as funding, I have not had any requests for funding for that or any particular dollar amount.
As far as the cheerleading, when we first, and I've had calls. I mean, I had a lot of some ladies that have done the programs through the Topper program, and there is a huge interest in having this. Now, I know Town Acres has their own cheerleading squad right now, and maybe a couple of other elementary schools also do that. But it is something. Now, as far as the funding, haven't talked to anybody and really do not have any idea at this point right now. I think the Town Acres, I don't know, I think they kind of buy the uniforms and fund themselves right now, so I don't know how that would work.
Is there expectation of like any fundraising component for the team members?
For football,
Yeah.
it depends on where we're at on the money and what we have, what they have to do. I think that, we sell so much anyhow with our high school, and I think Dr. Barnett would tell you, he's seen so much. We probably do too much of those sales and the fundraising, and so we don't want to just, kind of throw that with 15 teams around the city. But if it needs to be done, we can go to other resources in the communities and in other businesses and groups that I know of. We'll reach out to them for funding if needed.
Because, there's only so much cookie dough and gift wrap a person needs.
Absolutely, yes,
Get the
sir.
Girl Scouts to raise it for
Yeah.
us, yeah.
Okay.
I would say that it was brought to our attention when this was put on the agenda that the cheerleading is not run by the schools in the elementary schools now, that it is run by, it's parent-directed and parent-driven, and that they have to purchase their own uniforms, and that would be a cost that if they went out to all the schools, that would need to be added to this as a startup cost if that program was going to run parallel with the football program. And one of the best guesses that I got from a parent who actually runs a cheerleading program at an elementary school was to do all that for all the schools would be about $50,000 to upfront cost for the uniforms and everything. That's what I was kind of indicating. The
Mr. Ellis?
the pom-poms. and The money's in the pom-poms.
Yeah, the pom-poms.
Yeah, that's what I've read.
Mr. Ellis, is there a elementary school basketball league right
Yes,
now?
sir, there is.
Is the Parks and Rec run that?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So do they have cheerleaders at those games?
Occasionally, some of the teams will have cheerleaders.
but not all of them,
Coach
that
Carter
is-
said not all of them.
Okay.
Can I make a motion to pull this from the consent agenda? And is it doable to have a more clear-cut pro forma of what we think this is gonna look like going forward in time to put it in the next agenda packet?
And could I make one request, is let's finish out the hearings of all these, and then if you decide to pull one, that you make a motion to approve the consent agenda in its
Absent.
entirety, absent the one
Okay.
you want to pull. That
Well, I just
makes
was trying to
things
move,
easier.
okay, well, you
Yes,
know.
we can have it ready in 2 weeks.
Okay.
I have one final question, hopefully. And again, thank you for the presentation, Coach Carter. You made explanations on having teams for first and second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. But do you have, and I may not know this, it may be already in place, but is there a plan to expand seventh and eighth grade teams as well?
No, sir. And how this is set up for middle schools right now is our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade can play our middle school. But what happens is there's a huge age gap right there. So you have a lot of 6th graders that probably need to be in rec ball that are on that, because there's a huge difference. So what we would like to see is this be the feeder system that the 5th and 6th play together, and then our middle school consisted of our 7th and 8th grade teams, and they play a varsity and JV schedule also. So it kind of just goes right up with it.
Yeah, Vice Mayor, that was a good question, but yet, having experienced middle school sports now, it's really hard for 6th graders. And so to incorporate this back into something like this actually gives them an opportunity to actually play. And so I think that's a great idea, absolutely.
I'd like to also add, Coach Carter, thank you for, I know you've been thinking about this for a long, long time. I work with youth, and the kind of programs I do, you will get the youth whose parents can afford to get them to a golf class and transport them and pay the price for that. I think what you're talking about here are going to touch the kids that we need to touch. And while we do have the basketball programs, if these practices and the interaction with coaches and everything can happen at their elementary schools, which most of them now have field space to be able to do that, I think we're going to get a lot more involved and engaged at an age where, as you know, the character development and all that can really touch them, and we hopefully can get these kids headed on the right path. Learning how to play on a team develops a lot of interpersonal skills for these children. And so the more we can do with those, I think the better. So I'll look forward to the final, numbers and see how we make this happen. But in concept, I'm absolutely in support and feel like we can make a difference in the lives of a lot of kids that probably are sitting at home and have no place to go. And hopefully now they can go over in Keystone and play basketball as well. But the more we can do for these kids, the better.
Yes, ma'am. And to say, our middle school started this year, and we had about 70 people on our football team at Liberty Bell, and had around 50 at Indian Trail. And one thing we noticed at Indian Trail is those 50, there was about over 30 that had never played football in that section. So we want to represent all of Johnson City and have the opportunities that reach out. So there's something going on when we have that many people playing that have not played, but that wasn't the case at Liberty Bell. So that's another reason we want to do this.
So we will take your motion up at the end. So hold that for just a minute, because we got one more to discuss. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Coach.
All right, and the last one is 5.3.1, and that was Vice Mayor Murphy.
And we have Brian Ross coming. I don't know, Vice Mayor, if you want to ask a question about this one?
Yeah, just need a little more further explanation. I think he may answer some of my various questions based on your first introduction of the.
Sure.
This
This is at the raw water intake
Yes, sir.
facility on the Watauga River that brings
Yes,
in
sir.
water, pumps it to the treatment center. A lot of pumps and equipment and electrical that generate a lot of heat. And these units cool those rooms to keep the pumps and electrical equipment cool. They've been in service for quite a long time. We've spent a lot of money keeping them in repair, and they're just at their end of their useful life.
Okay. So, yeah, you've answered two of my questions. I do have one final one. And those introductions really do help. They're very helpful when we have someone come and give a brief explanation as to what the item is about. I noticed on the bid sheet that we had Sylvester and Cockrum. You have two listed on there. It seems as if they're the same company, or are they the same company represented by two entities? I'm a little,
No, we specified either carrier or train manufacturers for the
Okay.
project. So
So
that
the same
Sylvester and
company?
Cockrum is a dealer for both of those brands. So they offered two alternate bids. And Norwell, I'm not sure which brand they included, but they're obviously significantly higher.
so the
Didn't
carrier and the,
Gold-plated blend.
Yeah, there you go.
so the carrier and train are two different manufacturers?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when checking the specifications of this type of equipment, because I'm familiar with carrier and train. Train seems to have a better customer service rating than carrier, based on my research. And I know, we could save, by going with carrier, we could save $1,300, but based on customer service ratings, would it be better to go with the one that has, better ratings rather than save $1,300 on that size piece of
Yeah,
equipment?
I don't know. This was under advisement of a couple of my mechanics who work on these equipment, and they're satisfied with either brand, but.
Okay.
So, going with Train would certainly be okay with us as well, but we're okay with a lower number of carriers. I don't know that there would be any appreciable difference in customer
Okay.
service or performance of the equipment.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. And I don't think there was anything else.
No, sir.
So we're going to go back to a motion we had.
So I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda less 5.1.3. And then I don't know if I'm stipulating in my motion in the affirmative on the consent agenda what should happen with 5.1.3.
I think staff has the direction to bring it back.
Yeah, I mean,
in
I think
2
the only
weeks.
thing would just be kind of flesh some of those details out. Even things as simple as when we say kids who can't afford it won't pay the fee, there needs to be a criteria that defines whether you can, there are a lot of things I can't afford that just really has to do with more my attitude towards them, And so I think we need to decide, is that free and reduced lunch? What is the objective measure? And then just come back with that so that we know what we're signing on for.
Sure. I'm hoping it would be the same policy that we use in Parks and Rec for other
Currently.
programs. So I hope we would be able to just provide you with that policy.
I don't know, April's shaking her head like she knows that there is a criteria, so.
We do already have
Can you-
established,
April, do you mind coming up to the,
The microphone records
Yeah,
for us,
sorry.
so that's.
to my knowledge, yes, we already have established criteria. That is something that we offer in our basketball programs as well as our soccer programs.
Okay,
If
thank you.
we have children who are unable to pay, the parents answer several questions to make sure that, they actually are in need of those things. So,
And then also things like, I know in our packet, there was mention of a board of directors, there's mention tonight of bylaws. Are those married together? Can we see a draft of what that would entail, what that would be?
Yeah, I mean, is that appointed by this board or by Parks and Rec's advisory? Yeah, I just think that we ought to know that stuff before we're already out of the
And is
gate.
I
there-
think just the purpose of what it is if needed, or Parks and Rec Board in general can handle it.
I would imagine that if there is a board of directors that's appointed in bylaws, that your criteria for any type of scholarships, which would pay for those that could not, those criteria would need to be established within the bylaws of that board, so.
And so, I'd love to see like we're saying, in 2 weeks, if we can gather all this information, also, is the necessity for this fall for a particular reason that we could actually answer all these questions to get us comfortable with the spend? Or is it something that we look at where they have a little bit more time, that we're looking at this for not 24, but, or, yeah, whatever year's coming up, that it might be, we're looking at getting it approved, but it's in a cycle where we really have it all fledged out to where it's a successful, sustainable, long-term program, instead of trying to rush it through, because there's just a lot of questions right now.
And I think that as a staff, we can more than likely put together everything that you need in order to answer all of those questions, being that we do have other cities that we are in contact with in our Parks and Recreation, such as Maryville, that have these established programs that have been successful. I feel certain that we can obtain that information.
I hear there may even be a coach at ETSU that might be familiar with the program you might
Yes.
want to reach out to.
Yeah.
Somebody named George.
In April, just for I know you're planning in your timeline now how to do that, but we'll need that information in a week.
Yes.
So that we can get it to them, so they'll have a week to review it before the next commission meeting. So by next Friday.
We will get that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, April.
all.
So that was my motion.
So I have a motion.
Second. Third.
I think you beat me to it.
I believe he did too.
I will just say that I believe we're going to approve this like we have soccer leagues and basketball leagues and all that for Parks and Rec. And I'm not sure we need to delay it except for the funding part, just making sure we know how much we're going to spend, not that we don't want this moving forward. So anyway, you can call the roll now, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Wise?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
Commission, the next order of business is item 6.1. This is ordinance number 4833-23. This is the first reading for rezoning number 1102 Myers-Cherokee Road and Brook Hollow Road.
All right, good evening, everybody. As Ms. Ball mentioned, this was Myers, the Cherokee Brook Hollow rezoning. The subject property in question tonight is highlighted in the hatched area. It's surrounded by the R2 zoning district with the exception of across Cherokee Road is the R4. It is a low-density zoning district that's applicable to the site right now, and they are seeking an R3, a slightly higher density. The property through the aerials obviously is highlighted in the red. You can see a view from Brook Hollow looking southeast on the top right picture, and then the bottom picture is the view of the property, the view of Cherokee looking west. So you're on, I imagine, Brook Hollow in that part. The property's highlighted in the green. You can see the large commercial or residential area surrounding the green. Slightly some blue to the north of that, and that's the annexation history. So you can kind of see as the annexation's grown out, where we've grown towards down Cherokee Road, again highlighted in the yellow star. This is the binding conceptual plan that the applicant has submitted, the most recent one. There's been a little bit of history with this project that I'd be happy to go into if y'all are interested, or if questions arise, but this is the current one the applicant has submitted. You can notice there's an entrance off of Brook Hollow for the 16 units, and Cherokee Road obviously is to the south, going left to right on the picture. There's a couple slight changes to this, one of them being the addition of a dumpster required by the city. That's, the applicant is aware, the engineer's aware of that. It's not represented on this, but that was a change later after they submitted. But you can kind of see there's 16 units on the property. Stormwater, it's going to be a private street. You can see the stormwater to the southwest and to the south kind of eastish in the pond areas. Type 1 buffer around the property, and they are proposing sidewalks and a multi-use trail. To give you a little background on the history, this is the third attempt for this particular property. The first one sought out R2C, which was denied. It included 9 detached single-family homes with driveways along Cherokee, which was problematic for traffic. And there was site distance issues initially brought up during that on Brook Hollow, which has a bit of a hill to it. The curb cuts were not desired on Cherokee, as I mentioned. The second attempt sought out R3, similar to this. It did pass first reading, but was withdrawn, and it did have a very similar proposal. The comprehensive plan future land use map that we have here now is obviously highlighting in yellow. We just have residential. It does identify this as residential, so it's appropriate there. There's a couple of bridge plan policies that it fits to promote infill development, support quality multifamily, affordable housing types, and provide greater housing choices. And the strategic plan does identify a mix of housing option types as a quality of place. We held a neighborhood, or hosted a neighborhood meeting on December 30th. 2 neighbors that are in attendance tonight attended the meeting as well, along with the couple that owns the property, and I believe their engineer, if I'm not mistaken. Some of the concerns were the number of units, the traffic safety related to the placement of trash receptacles, which we did mention. That's going to be changed to a central dumpster location required by the city. And the site distance was addressed as well. Some of the site distance concerns, to kind of make you aware of that, was earlier rezoning of this property. I believe the first one, the site distance on Brook Hollow was considered problematic because it was thought that the road was signed as or identified as 30 miles per hour. With traffic since then, traffic department and the city, we've identified that road to actually be 25. So the site distance, while still is still what it is today, is actually within the bounds of the roadway and the traffic design of that roadway, particularly the signed speed limit. But that is the concerns that were brought up at the neighborhood meeting. Staff does recommend approval. We did seek out comments from Fire, Public Works, Water, and Sewer, and they all filled that in as recommended approval. And obviously the infill development does add housing, which doesn't really contribute to the urban sprawl transition between R4, which is across the street, and R2 that surrounds it. R3 is a naturally middle of the road kind of buffer there. It is in close proximity to Collector Road, and for sale attached units would add to the variety of costs in the area. Planning Commission heard this in January and voted 8-0 to recommend approval. They mentioned the desirable layout, and it was a good plan for small multifamily housing. At this point, and this is the first reading, there will be a second reading on February 16th, and a third reading if it progresses that to, I believe, March 2nd. I can double check those numbers, but right now you all have the option to adopt, deny, or defer action. And obviously, as a first reading, it is not a public hearing, but I'm available for any questions should you have any.
Could you go back to the concept plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it'd be 16 townhomes then.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
So, fire department was okay with this T split, what's the
Hammerhead.
Hammerhead.
Yes, sir.
I didn't know.
They have seen
Pork
this.
chop. Not a pork chop.
And well, we call this one a T-bone. The fire department did review the concept plan, as we try to do with all the other city departments. And while this is not the absolute final exact engineer drawing plans, and we will make sure that the fire department's okay with that moving forward. But they did look at that and did not really identify this as a big issue. But it is early in the game. Yes,
I
ma'am.
noted on your, from the neighborhood plan, that some of the neighbors were concerned about riffraff. I think that's the terminology you used in there.
That's a terminology used by the
Okay.
concerned citizen. Yes, ma'am.
So, seeing this concept plan, and they're going to be brand new units, do we know anything about the elevations and what's going to be used on the exteriors, that kind of thing?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
So, not a big fan of the hammerheads, just for the record. Encounter them a lot in Knoxville and have very rarely seen them actually work, because they end up becoming a basketball court, or they become the trailer's parking spot. And unless you have somebody that's going to be aggressively enforcing this thing that is critical to getting public services in there, whether it's the garbage truck or the fire truck, all of a sudden is impeded. And so my question is, I think, kind of twofold. One is about the use of hammerheads. I just want to kind of, again, reiterate what I've said before, not a fan of hammerheads. But when you look at this particular parcel, it's in line with a whole lot more undeveloped land running parallel with Cherokee. And it seems to me that even though this request is only about this parcel, we should at least be looking at how would future development beyond this parcel further down Cherokee work if our primary goal is to not have a lot of curb cuts on Cherokee. Have we considered that, and to what degree should we consider that as it relates to this project? Like, should we be leaving this as a stub, for example, so that future development continues down without additional curb cuts? I guess I'd let you react to some of that.
That would be, so there's a lot to unpack with that. First, the question of hammerheads. If I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, I would defer to Will Ryder, our development services coordinator, but the plan specifically on the screen, which I don't see the full thing, is going to have to comply to our subdivision regs. And if I'm not mistaken, subdivision regs have, for lack of a better word, banned hammerheads. So I'm not aware if the applicant is understanding that a cul-de-sac will be required, but as their own plan says, it will conform to subdivision regs, and I think that cul-de-sacs are required, and Will's coming up here to correct me.
Look who's here.
Now, to answer some of the other questions before I turn it over to Will for that question, number one, as you can see, there's a pond at that southern southeast corner or southwest corner of the screen. Obviously, the one of the largest challenges of development is making water run uphill. So that's the most natural location for the pond, and the engineer, who I did not see in the audience but may have snuck in, will probably tell you that that's going to be probably the best location for that. So to limit the access on Cherokee for future development, while probably has a lot of foresight, would be problematic. Now, the other problem with it is to stub out, this will be a private drive. And private drives are not considered, to my knowledge, by the fire code to be another access point. But we can definitely work with the engineer on that to see what options they have of stubbing out to make sure future development has multiple points of ingress, egress. I would defer to Will on the requirement for a hammerhead.
Yes, sir. Good evening. I guess the first thing on this particular piece of property, there's no active subdivision that's taking place, so we're not entering into the subdivision regulations. They're just proposing a private drive, and there's going to be no street dedication, which would also put us into the sub-regs if they were doing so. Having said that, we did align our subdivision regulations with the fire code, and hammerheads in the subdivision regulations are still permitted, preferably with a strong recommendation in particular cases from the city engineer. But as I said, we're not in the subdivision regulations, and therefore can't also enforce the requirement of street stubs to tie into properties that might develop in the future. We did think about the interconnection, but with the way they're choosing to develop the property on this one particular lot and this type of development, and not owning the other piece and not entering the subdivision regulations, we simply weren't able to enforce a connection. Having said that, if it does in fact end up being a hammerhead, and we can certainly go back and speak with the developer and get them to consider a cul-de-sac, it would have to be 120 feet of pavement, which would be required by the fire department to ensure ease of access and that sort of thing.
And can I ask, and I don't know if it would be you or Justin, in order to address connectivity into the future, if the hammerhead is allowed, can we request or require an easement onto the adjacent property so that as the development comes in the future, there's an easement so access can happen on the other property?
Isn't that the issue with the private drive, though? I mean, we couldn't rely on the private drive to be the access.
Well, I think what the city manager is requesting is there's a a way that we can work with the engineer or the developer to require an access easement from Ocala all the way through the property to the adjacent properties. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so that you would have a cross easement, even though it's privately maintained, so that if there is another access, again, it's private, but you still have the ability to connect to it. If in fact, I mean,
So it preserves our right to do that without
and potentially
obligating
take over
it.
the street, even at
Okay.
that point.
Thank you.
So what creates the private drive versus building to street, our city street standards?
It will still have to meet, it almost becomes like it's treated almost by the parking requirements within the zoning code, which require a certain amount of pavement width, base, asphalt, and concrete, or pavement to build that to a standard required by the zoning code.
I mean, I'm assuming this will be a HOA and whatnot. I guess my concern is we've seen in the past where a road starts as a private drive and then later on they come to us and want us to take the road over because they don't want to maintain.
For the record, this commission has never agreed to one of those.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is, you know, what gives us consideration to look at a private drive versus saying, let's just make it a road?
If they were subdividing the property and we were in the subdivision regulations, then they would be forced to build it to one of the cross sections in the subdivision regulations with sidewalks on, and this particular, sidewalks on two sides of the street, a 50-foot right-of-way and those sorts of things. But since we are not in the subdivision regulations, it comes down to the standards of the zoning code of having a proper drive aisle. And this would be a very, very difficult request, I would think, for the HOA to come in and ask us to take this, over. It's unfortunate, but, and I know several instances that you're speaking of where we've been asked to, and they weren't originally developed to a public street standard, the private drives, which we've changed because of that in the subdivision regulations, but we're just simply not in the subregs in this particular case.
I think at that point, staff would wholeheartedly recommend that y'all don't consider that for a variety of different reasons, as Will has mentioned. That obviously is going to be constructed to a parking lot standard as opposed to a street standard that we're typically responsible for paving and repaving and patching and repairing. But most importantly, we haven't looked at this from terms of setbacks, and we certainly don't want to create a nonconformity should the road ever be dedicated to us. And we just, it's not a contingency we've looked at, so we would highly recommend to y'all not consider that. And if, should that ever come for y'all, we would make sure that our professional expertise is known to y'all.
And this would be serviced by a dumpster
Yes, sir.
versus red cans?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's a city requirement. It would be too problematic to have the rollout cans on Ocala.
And we don't know where that would be located at this
It's
point.
right there, isn't it?
I'm not sure it's actually called out on this plan. I think at that point,
Well, that's what I originally
Yeah.
thought, but I'm not sure that it says 3 parking spaces.
yeah, there's the turnout to the left, right where it says C note, down to the southwest. That's for a postal kiosk area for pullover, and then the other one on the right, I believe it says turn around and backup area. So I don't believe this plan identifies that, but the engineer is aware, and they're going to have to make accommodations for that.
And then there's another slide about departments had viewed, I don't remember if it's forward or backwards, or up or down, which.
Well, describe again. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Whichever slide had about the different departments that had looked at fire and.
Yes, sir. Oh, gosh.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, was that it? I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
One more, there.
There we go. Yes, sir.
So I guess I always get confused about this. All reviewing departments, there's fire, public works, water and sewer, but I don't see transit or schools. Was there any input as to if there's any?
We're making an attempt moving forward to include as many departments as we feel are impacted by this, as it's, to my understanding, not in a very close proximity to a school. We didn't seek that particular.
Sure.
We learned our lesson with Coble Coffee.
Sure. Yeah, well, but transit runs our school buses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So,
But
how they would deliver school bus service to a development like that, it's always
Yes,
being
sir.
an old school board member or something that I.
No, we'll
question.
bring that back, and we're trying internally, we're trying to get all on the same page. So
Yeah.
when we come to y'all, we speak as one with all the departments, and obviously if one department has an issue, well, that needs to be presented to y'all. So
Right.
we can do a better job, and we will do a better job of that. But I can look into transit and see if there's any school bus concerns.
Cool.
Our engineer has been involved in the stormwater, or is this just their architect who's decided the stormwater pond needs to go? As you said, it's gonna have to flow uphill because there's a big swale on that property that probably is gonna have to be filled in order for those townhouses to be built there. If you go to the picture one, keep going back. Keep going. Right there.
Mhm.
So you can see where the swale is, the low point comes right down, divides the property almost.
Mhm.
And so likely all that's gonna have to be filled in, and you're talking about then the stormwater detention area in this lower left-hand corner,
Yes,
which will
ma'am.
be uphill from that. I guess that's what brought your comment on it.
No, the comment, and I apologize for the confusion, the comment is it's very difficult to have water run uphill. So the naturally occurring
Sure.
places for storm and detention is obviously at the lowest points of the property. And that's where they've located it on this plan.
Okay.
You mentioned, and I recall this coming before us before, and it was similar. What are the, and you may have stated it, but I've forgotten. What are the changes from the request prior?
The first one was single family, and the biggest challenge on that was a lot of, I believe, 4 or 5 driveways on
Okay.
Cherokee,
I couldn't
along with another 3 or 4 on Ocala. The second one had a very similar plan to this. I can't remember how many units it was, but it was of similar density and scope. And that was pulled by the applicant after the first reading, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019, if I'm not mistaken.
Anything else? Anyone?
I will go ahead and say that I live just over the hill in that neighborhood, so I will recuse myself on this project. I'll ask questions, but I won't vote.
Do I have a motion?
Does that constitute a conflict?
I think we would ask Ms. Sandos, but I am not sure unless we would say that it would hurt the value. The question, Ms. Sandos, is if someone lives near, we have a commissioner that lives near this project and is.
It's in the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
Technically, that does not fall under a conflict of interest. Primarily, what you're looking at on conflicts are the financial impacts or any gain that you're going to have from voting one way or the other.
They're waving at you to speak into the microphone. If you had eyes in the back of your head like you tell your kids you do, you would have known that.
No, I saw it.
Okay, you were just ignoring them.
No, that technically wouldn't qualify as a conflict of interest for the purposes of legally having any interest in what you're voting on.
Again, do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the rezoning of 1102 Myers Cherokee Road and Brook Hollow Road.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I, like Commissioner Wise, am not a fan of the hammerheads, as I now know the terminology. And, you know, I have a little bit of concern. I'll have to go back and look when we looked at this before it was pulled, to see what our concerns were, to remind myself. But those would be the things I'm thinking about.
Can you remind me of the vote from the planning commission? Or did this go?
8-0 in
8-0.
favor. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure we got that out there, too.
And if it's of any benefit, obviously, this is the first reading. There will be a second reading,
Right.
public hearing on
Right.
February 16th.
Now,
Yep.
question, could, in the event there is an alternative means in lieu of the hammerhead, could that be presented on the second reading, or it has to go all the way back through again?
That-
Okay,
it's-
but we're not voting on that, right?
No,
That's more
no,
of a
the
conceptual, right?
Yeah, it's not a substantial change.
Okay, we're just
in-
doing a rezoning.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir. But we can definitely pass that comment on to the engineer in hopes of, hopefully, they'll show up on February 16th and help address that concern of y'all's.
Okay, that'll be good.
Yes, sir.
And I'm interested in having more conversation concerning this anyway.
Absolutely.
Anything further? All right, Mr. Trivett.
Commissioner Brock,
I'm still going to abstain.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes, to get to public hearing.
Commissioner Wise,
Ditto, yes, to public hearing.
Vice Mayor Murphy,
Yes,
And
for
Mayor
public hearing, and I do want to see the varieties of what could be presented.
Mayor Fowler.
Yes.
The next order of business, Commissioners, you have another public hearing. Sorry, need to turn my page. This is ordinance number 4832-22. This is the third reading. This is an ordinance to rezone land located at 604 Leisure Lane from light industrial district to planned arterial district.
Is this a public hearing?
Mr. Westbrook, this is not a public hearing.
Oh, okay.
This is the third reading.
Anything-
Nothing is
apologize.
substantial.
Motion to approve.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Trivett.
Commissioner Brock,
Yes, and I'll go out and wash my car.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner Wise,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Murphy,
Yes.
Mayor Fowler.
Yes.
We should have the cleanest cars in the
I
world.
tell you, that
in
that
Johnson
is car
City.
wash haven out there.
I know.
Yeah.
Next, Commission, you have item 8.1. This is an annexation. This is a request to proceed with the owner consent annexation for Holy Taco annexation. This is to consider a request to proceed with the annexation of approximately 1.75 acres located at 4903 North Roan Street, currently known as Holy Taco Boones Creek.
As the city manager mentioned, this is for Holy Taco Boones Creek. It is an annexation of an existing commercial property of about 1.75 acres. To give you a little background where we are, request to proceed was received February 2nd. Planning Commission will hear this should y'all make the motion tonight to proceed on February 15th, and then obviously preliminary resolutions on March 2nd, as well as the first reading for the zoning assignment. March 16th, the second zoning assignment reading, which is not a public hearing, and then the final resolution, which is the public hearing, and the third reading of the zoning assignment, which is also a public hearing on April 6th, is what we look to wrap this up on. And again, with Peyton's famous star, which disappeared. There we go. All right, you were here.
Got the stars.
So the property obviously is adjacent to our city corporate limits currently, highlighted in the yellow. The property in question is hatched out in the red. It is, as I mentioned before, seeking assignment of B4, which is not the request tonight. We're just seeing if we want to proceed with annexation. You all want to proceed with annexation. This is the property in question. Again, like I mentioned, an existing restaurant. Plan of services will include, has not been done yet. We'll start that process as soon as y'all cut us loose tonight, if that's so the case. We will include police, fire, water, wastewater, solid waste, streets, schools, transit, obviously our inspections, planning, zoning, code enforcement, street light, and recreation. And we will double check on transit and schools and all applicable agencies outside of that as well. We'll probably touch base with TDOT to make sure that they have their input. The property's highlighted in the blue. You can see North Roan coming from the south to the north. City Commission's options tonight are approve, deny, and defer action. I'm available for any questions if you have it.
Any questions from the commission?
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Trivett.
Commissioner Brock,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner Wise,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Mayor Fowler.
Yes.
That is the last item on our formal agenda. If I may, I would love to introduce our new finance director, We have Stephanie Laus
We are
with us.
so glad you're here.
And we are
turn
very
to me.
excited to have her on board. She started Monday and keeps coming back, so we're very grateful for her.
Welcome. Very welcome.
Glad to have you. All right.
Do you have a
Anything else?
I don't have anything else.
No presentation.
I think we
then?
brought Justin out and grilled him.
I will add that Stephanie is a CPA. She's in the process of transferring her CPA over from Virginia to Tennessee, and she's submitted the work to do that, so we're very excited to have her here.
Thank
We
you.
are too.
We are too.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Commissioner Hunter, anything to add?
Nothing to add tonight.
Commissioner Brown?
No.
Commissioner Wise? No. Vice Mayor Murphy?
Yes, I want to apologize for the spilled coffee in the beginning.
You even
Um,
made Commissioner Wise clean it
Well,
up.
No,
You got
yeah,
the-
just
You know, I
kept
do
it
want to
up.
give an explanation that Commissioner Wise did knock that over. You can go back and watch the film.
Through the red flag.
So,
That's
but I
right.
do want to apologize on his behalf.
Okay, thank you.
I have nothing else, so we
Revisionist
will
history.
adjourn the meeting.